alliances, which means that you wouldn't be joining things like NATO and the United Nations and taking marching orders from them. I mean, the most recent invasion and interference in war was in Libya, and Congress wasn't even consulted. Marching orders came from NATO and United Nations. So national sovereignty, it is a strong requirement in the Constitution for the federal government to provide the national defense. That was one of the reasons that they wanted to start, bring the colonies together. Other reasons, of course, were the free trade among the states as well as a unified sound currency. But national defense was a major issue. And and the strong advice of the founders was that you don't isolate us from other countries. What you do is you work very hard in getting along with as many people. That means extend friendship to those who will accept it, and extend and participate in trade. If you do that, their strong belief was we would less likely fight with those people. And I use this, the example of what happened in the 60s, as a demonstration of this. I was called up during the Cuban crisis in 1962. By the time I was actually sworn into the Air Force, the crisis in Cuba was over, but the Vietnam crisis was ongoing. Of course, later on we found out exactly why we were fighting, because there was a lot of deceptions and falsehoods told about.
That never happened in government, Dr. Paul.
No, never. But we as a country were involved, just as in Korea we were involved without a declaration of war. In Vietnam there was no declaration of war. But the combination of the French and the Americans being involved in a civil war, really, in Vietnam, involved probably close to 1 million Vietnamese killed. We lost, if you count the missing in action, 60,000. Cost a lot of money. We ushered in an age that Johnson said, it's no big deal, we can have guns and butter. And they started, expanded the welfare state, the Great Society, as well as the war. And of course, the guns and butters really had to be paid for in the 70s. But we left under dire circumstances, and if you're honest, if we're honest with ourselves, it was a foolish adventure. It cost a lot of money and a lot of lives. But the theory was that we had to do that, or there would be a domino effect. That was the term used. It would become all communist. The Chinese communists would take over. Just think of what's happened. We quit fighting with the Chinese, even though they had a very bad reputation in their worst years of killing their own people, and they were ruthless. And yet we started talking to the Chinese, trading with the Chinese. But in Vietnam, what happened? We left, and after several years, all of a sudden we started talking to them and trading with them and investing over there. They were coming back and forth. And I thought, wow, just think of what was achieved in peace and was never achieved in war. So I think if under the dire circumstances of that week when I was called into duty with the confrontation of the Soviets and us over Cuba, and they had 30,000 nuclear weapons. And guess what solved that problem? It was talking to each other, diplomacy, getting on the red phone and saying, you want missiles in Cuba because we have missiles in Turkey. Oh, I never would have guessed that. So fortunately, the two got together and we took weapons out of Turkey. They took weapons out of Cuba, and the crisis was dissolved, rather quickly. So I favor that approach over the saying, well, someday somebody might get a nuclear weapon, and we have to endorse the idea of preemptive war, which means, to me, aggression and going in, and we need to occupy and take over and tell them what to do. I think that is wrong. That's what we've embarked on, and I think defending this country is a lot different than occupation of other nations, which does a great deal of harm to our safety.